I sat across from my mother at her kitchen table, the same table where I'd eaten breakfast every morning for 18 years, and she looked at me with tears in her eyes and said she loved me. She said it twice, actually. Once before she asked me not to bring it up at Thanksgiving, and once after she suggested I might want to skip Christmas this year if I was going to insist on being so open about it. The coffee in my cup had gone cold while we talked, and I remember staring at the small chip on the rim, the one that had been there since I was in high school, thinking how strange it was that some things never change while others transform completely overnight. I'm 32 years old now, and that conversation happened 3 months ago, but I still wake up some mornings forgetting it happened, reaching for my phone to call my mom about something stupid before I remember that things are different now. Not broken, she'd insist. Just different. Just complicated. Just requiring some time and space and understanding, which apparently meant understanding that my family's comfort mattered more than my honesty. I should probably start at the beginning, or at least somewhere closer to it. My name is David, and until about 8 months ago, I would have told you I had a pretty standard life. I grew up in a suburb outside of Charlotte, North Carolina, the kind of place where everyone knows everyone and Friday night football games are still a big deal. My dad worked in insurance, my mom was a teacher, and I have 2 younger sisters who both got married right out of college to guys they met at church. I did everything I was supposed to do. I played baseball in high school, went to a state university, got a degree in business administration, and landed a decent job at a marketing firm in the city. I dated girls throughout college, had a serious girlfriend for 2 years after graduation, and when that ended, everyone including me just assumed I'd eventually meet someone else, get married, have kids, and continue the pattern that had been established for generations in my family. The thing is, I did meet someone else. His name was Marcus, and he became my roommate completely by accident when my previous roommate moved out with only 3 weeks' notice, and I desperately needed someone to split the rent on my apartment. Marcus was 28, worked as a physical therapist at a sports medicine clinic, and had just relocated to Charlotte for the job. We met through a mutual friend who thought we'd be compatible as roommates, and honestly, for the first few months, it was just that. Compatible. Easy. We had similar schedules, similar cleanliness standards, and we both liked to cook, so we'd often end up making dinner together and watching whatever game was on, or binging through some series one of us had been meaning to watch. He was from California originally, and he had this relaxed way about him that I found refreshing after growing up in the South where everything felt laden with unspoken rules and expectations. Marcus was tall, maybe 6'2", with dark brown skin and these incredibly expressive eyes that seemed to smile even when his mouth didn't. He had broad shoulders from years of swimming competitively, and his hands were strong and sure, which made sense given his profession. He wore his hair short and had a small scar above his left eyebrow from a childhood accident he'd told me about one night over beers. He wasn't perfect, not even close. He left his gym bag in the middle of the hallway more often than not. He had a terrible habit of forgetting to replace the toilet paper roll, and he sang off-key in the shower every single morning, usually to whatever pop song was stuck in his head. But he was real. He was present. He listened when I talked about work stress or family drama, and he had this way of asking follow-up questions that made me feel like he actually cared about the answers. I didn't notice it happening at first. The shift, I mean. It started small, with me looking forward to coming home at the end of the day, because I knew Marcus would probably be there. Then it became me volunteering to pick up groceries because I knew what he liked and wanted to surprise him. Then it was me suggesting we try that new restaurant downtown, just the 2 of us, and feeling disappointed when he mentioned maybe inviting some other friends along. I told myself it was just friendship, that I'd never had a close male friend before, and was just enjoying the novelty of it. I told myself a lot of things that weren't quite true. The first time I really couldn't ignore it was on a Tuesday night in April. We'd both had long days, and Marcus had suggested we order pizza and watch the playoff game. I'd agreed immediately, grateful for the excuse to just decompress. We ended up on the couch, and at some point during the third quarter, Marcus stretched his arms above his head and one of them came to rest on the back of the couch behind me. It wasn't touching me, not really, but I was suddenly extremely aware of how close he was, of the warmth radiating from his body, of the faint smell of his cologne mixed with the lavender detergent he used. The game continued. People cheered on the screen, and I sat there barely breathing, trying to figure out why my heart was beating so hard over something so insignificant. That night, after Marcus had gone to bed, I lay awake in my room staring at the ceiling and trying to rationalize what I was feeling. It was admiration, I told myself. Marcus was confident and kind and easy to be around, and I admired those qualities. It was loneliness, I decided. I'd been single for over a year, and I was just craving connection. It was anything, everything, other than what it actually was. I must have run through a dozen explanations before I finally fell asleep, around 3 in the morning, exhausted from the mental gymnastics. But the feeling didn't go away. If anything, it got stronger. I started noticing things about Marcus I'd never paid attention to before. The way he bit his lower lip when he was concentrating on something. The sound of his laugh, which was deeper and more genuine than most people's. The way he'd touch my shoulder briefly when he passed behind me in the kitchen. A casual gesture that left me feeling unsteady for minutes afterward. I started comparing these feelings to what I'd felt with my ex-girlfriend, with the women I'd dated before her, and I kept coming up empty. I'd cared about them, certainly. I'd enjoyed spending time with them. But I'd never felt this pull, this magnetic draw that made me want to be near someone constantly, that made their absence feel like something physical I had to endure. I tried to push it down. I tried to ignore it. I went on a few dates with women I met through apps, hoping that would reset whatever was happening in my brain. One woman, Sarah, was particularly great. She was smart and funny and attractive, and on paper we should have been perfect together. But when she kissed me goodnight after our 3rd date, all I could think about was whether Marcus was still awake when I got home, whether we'd have a chance to talk before bed. I ended things with Sarah the next week, telling her I wasn't ready for a relationship, which was true in a way I couldn't fully articulate even to myself. Marcus started dating someone around that time, a woman named Jennifer he'd met at the gym. She was nice enough, I guess. I only met her a handful of times when she came by the apartment. Each time she was there, I found an excuse to leave, to give them privacy, telling myself I was being a good roommate, when really I just couldn't stand to watch them together. I couldn't stand the way he looked at her, the way he laughed at her jokes, the casual intimacy of his hand on her lower back as he walked her to the door. It felt like something was being taken from me, which was insane because it had never been mine to begin with. One night, about 2 months after they started dating, I came home late from a work event to find Marcus sitting alone on the couch in the dark. I almost didn't see him at first, and when I turned on the light, he looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. Jennifer had broken up with him. She'd said she could tell his heart wasn't fully in it, that he seemed distracted, distant. He told me all this in a flat voice, and then he asked if I wanted to have a beer with him. We ended up talking until almost 4 in the morning about relationships and expectations and the pressure to have everything figured out. At some point, he said something that stuck with me. He said sometimes you can care about someone and still know they're not right for you. That sometimes the person you're supposed to be with is so different from what you imagined that you almost don't recognize the feeling when it arrives. I wanted to ask him what he meant by that. I wanted to ask him a lot of things, but I didn't. I just listened and nodded and tried to ignore the fact that we were sitting closer than we needed to be, that our knees were almost touching, that I could count the individual eyelashes framing his tired eyes if I wanted to. When he finally said he should get some sleep, he reached over and squeezed my hand briefly, thanking me for listening, for being there. It was just a moment, maybe 3 seconds of contact, but I felt it everywhere. After that night, something shifted between us, though I couldn't quite name what it was. We were more careful around each other, more aware. Conversations that used to flow easily now had these small pauses, these moments of hesitation. We'd catch each other's eyes and look away too quickly. The casual touches that had been so normal before, the shoulder squeezes and high fives and playful shoves, became less frequent, like we both knew they meant something different now and weren't sure if that was allowed. I started having these moments where I'd be doing something completely mundane, like brushing my teeth or making coffee, and I'd suddenly be hit with the realization of what I was feeling. Not just attraction, though that was certainly part of it, but something deeper, something that felt like recognition. Like I'd been walking around my entire life wearing shoes that didn't quite fit, and I'd gotten so used to the discomfort that I'd forgotten what it felt like to walk without pain. And now, suddenly, I knew. I knew what I'd been missing, what I'd been avoiding, what I'd been too afraid to even consider. The fear was immense, paralyzing sometimes. I'd grown up in a conservative Christian household where homosexuality was never discussed except in hushed, disapproving tones. My church had made its stance clear. My family had made their stance clear, even if they'd never said it directly to me. I'd absorbed all of it, all those messages about what was natural and what wasn't, what was acceptable and what was shameful. And now here I was, 32 years old, lying awake at night thinking about my male roommate, feeling things I'd been taught my entire life were wrong. I started avoiding going home. I'd stay late at work, go to the gym twice a day, meet up with friends I hadn't seen in months, anything to not be in the apartment alone with Marcus, and these feelings I didn't know how to handle. He noticed, of course. He asked if everything was okay, if he'd done something to upset me. I told him work was just really busy, which was partially true. He seemed to accept this, but I could see the concern in his eyes, the confusion. We'd been so close, and now I was pulling away, and he didn't understand why. It all came to a head on a Friday night in June. I'd planned to go out with some co-workers, but the plans fell through at the last minute, and I found myself coming home much earlier than expected. Marcus was in the kitchen making dinner, and he lit up when he saw me, saying he'd made enough for two if I wanted to join him. I should have said no. I should have made up another excuse, another escape route, but I was tired of running, tired of the constant mental gymnastics, and honestly, I'd missed him. So I said yes. We ate on the couch, some pasta dish he'd learned from his grandmother, and we put on a movie neither of us had seen. It was comfortable and easy, like old times, and I felt myself relaxing for the first time in weeks. We talked about nothing important, laughing at the ridiculous plot of the movie, and somewhere along the way, we ended up sitting closer together. Not intentionally, or maybe completely intentionally, I still don't know. But I became aware that our shoulders were touching, that our thighs were pressed together, that I could feel his warmth through my jeans. The movie continued, but I wasn't watching anymore. I was focused entirely on the point of contact between us, on the way my breathing had gone shallow, on the fact that Marcus hadn't moved away. In fact, he seemed to have leaned in slightly, or maybe I was imagining it, projecting what I wanted onto a situation that was entirely innocent. I started to shift away, to put some distance between us, but then Marcus turned his head to say something about the movie, and suddenly, we were face to face, inches apart, and I could see the exact moment his expression changed from casual to something else entirely. Neither of us moved. We just looked at each other, and I swear I could hear my heartbeat in my ears, could feel the pulse of it in my throat. His eyes dropped to my mouth for just a second before coming back up, and that small gesture felt like a question, like permission being asked. I should have pulled back. I should have laughed it off, made a joke, done anything to break the tension. Instead, I leaned forward, closing the distance between us, and kissed him. It was soft at first, tentative, both of us still not quite believing it was happening. But then Marcus's hand came up to cup the back of my neck, his fingers threading through my hair, and the kiss deepened. It felt like falling and flying at the same time, like every nerve ending in my body had suddenly woken up after years of sleep. His lips were soft, his touch gentle but sure, and when we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, I felt like I'd been fundamentally rearranged on a molecular level. We sat there for a moment, foreheads touching, neither of us quite ready to open our eyes and face what had just happened. When I finally did look at him, Marcus was smiling, this small, almost shy smile that I'd never seen before. He said my name, just my name. But the way he said it made it sound like a complete sentence. And then we were kissing again, and this time, there was no hesitation, no uncertainty. His hands were on my face, in my hair, pulling me closer, and I was gripping his shirt like I was afraid he might disappear if I let go. We stayed on that couch for hours, just kissing and touching and learning each other, and it felt more right than anything I'd ever experienced. Afterward, we lay tangled together in the dim light from the TV, which was still playing the movie neither of us had watched. Marcus traced patterns on my arm with his fingertips, and I felt completely at peace for the first time in months, maybe for the first time in my life. He asked me if I was okay, if I was freaking out, and I realized I wasn't. I should have been. I should have been spiraling, panicking, already planning how to take it back and pretend it never happened. But instead, I just felt clear, certain, like I'd finally stopped lying to myself and could breathe properly for the first time. We talked until the sun started to come up, about everything and nothing. He told me he'd been attracted to me for months, that he'd broken up with Jennifer partly because he couldn't stop thinking about me, couldn't give her what she deserved when his heart was elsewhere. He said he'd been terrified I didn't feel the same way, that he'd been trying to respect our friendship and our living situation. I told him about my confusion, my fear, my failed attempts to date women and make myself feel something I clearly didn't feel. We laughed about how oblivious we'd both been, how much time we'd wasted dancing around each other, and then we kissed again, slower this time, sweeter, and I knew with absolute certainty that my life had just changed in a way I couldn't undo, didn't want to undo. The next few weeks were honestly the happiest of my life. We didn't tell anyone at first, wanting to keep it between us while we figured out what we were doing. We'd have dinner together every night, stay up late talking, fall asleep on the couch watching movies. We were careful when friends came over, maintaining the appearance of just being roommates. But the second we were alone, we'd gravitate toward each other like magnets. Marcus would come up behind me while I was cooking and wrap his arms around my waist, resting his chin on my shoulder. I'd wake up to find him watching me sleep, and instead of being creepy, it felt intimate and precious. We existed in this bubble where nothing else mattered, where the outside world and its opinions and expectations couldn't touch us. But bubbles always burst eventually. Mine burst on a Sunday afternoon when my mother called to invite me to a family barbecue. I was lying on the couch with Marcus, his head in my lap while I played with his hair, and I must have sounded different, happier, because my mom commented on it. She said I sounded good, asked if I'd met someone, and in that moment, with Marcus looking up at me with those warm, trusting eyes, I made a decision. I told her yes, I'd met someone who made me really happy. She was thrilled, of course. She started asking questions immediately. What was her name? Where did we meet? When could she meet her? All the standard mother questions. And I felt Marcus tense beneath me. Felt him start to sit up, but I kept my hand on his shoulder, keeping him there. I took a breath and said, "His name is Marcus. Mom, we live together. We've been together for about a month now, but I think I've had feelings for him much longer than that." The silence on the other end of the line was deafening. It stretched on so long I actually checked my phone to make sure the call hadn't dropped. Finally, my mother said, very carefully, that she didn't understand what I was saying. So I explained it as clearly as I could. I told her I was in a relationship with a man. I told her I was happy. I told her this felt more right than anything else ever had in my life. What followed was one of the most painful conversations I've ever had. My mother cried. She asked me if I was sure, if maybe I was just confused, if perhaps I was going through some kind of crisis. She asked if this was because of my breakup with my ex-girlfriend, if I was just lonely and latching on to the first person who showed me affection. She suggested I talk to our pastor, that maybe I needed counseling, that maybe this was just a phase I was working through. And through it all, I kept saying, "No, Mom, this isn't confusion. This isn't a phase. This is me. This is who I am. This is who I've always been. I just didn't let myself see it." She asked me not to tell my father yet, said she needed time to process this, to figure out how to handle it. She asked me not to bring Marcus to the barbecue, said it would be too much too soon for the family. She said she loved me, but she also said she needed some space. When I hung up, I was shaking. Marcus pulled me into his arms and held me while I tried to process what had just happened, what it meant that my mother's first response to my happiness was to ask me to hide it. I called my father the next day anyway. I figured if I was doing this, I needed to do it completely, not let my mother control the narrative. My dad was quieter about it than my mom had been. He listened while I explained, and then he was silent for a long time. Finally, he said he didn't really understand it, but he supposed I was an adult and could make my own choices. He said he hoped I knew what I was doing, that this kind of life wasn't easy, that people would judge me. He didn't say he was one of those people, but the implication was clear. He ended the call by saying he'd talk to my mother, that they'd figure out how to move forward as a family. My sisters were next. The younger one, Emily, was surprisingly okay with it. She said she'd had a gay friend in college and didn't see what the big deal was. She asked a few questions about Marcus, seemed genuinely interested in my happiness, and said she'd like to meet him sometime. My other sister, Rachel, was more like my parents. She said she'd pray for me, that she hoped I'd find my way back to the right path, that she worried about my soul. It stung, hearing that from someone I'd grown up with, someone I'd been close to. The barbecue happened without me. My mother called the day before to say maybe it was better if I sat this one out, just until everyone had more time to adjust. She said it with such careful phrasing, like she was trying to be diplomatic. But what I heard was, "Don't come. Don't bring your truth into our space. Don't make us uncomfortable." I told her I understood, even though I didn't. Not really. Marcus held me that night while I cried, angry at myself for crying, angry at my family for making me feel like I had to choose between them and my own happiness. Things got worse before they got better. My mother started calling regularly, but the conversations were stilted and awkward. She'd ask about work, about my health, about everything except the one thing that actually mattered. She never asked about Marcus. She never acknowledged that part of my life at all. It was like she'd decided that if she ignored it hard enough, it would go away, and we could go back to the way things were before. My father was even more distant. Our calls became less frequent, and when we did talk, he was formal, almost businesslike. He asked about my job, about my car, about whether I'd gotten the gutters cleaned like he'd suggested. But there was no warmth, no real connection. I felt like I was talking to a stranger who happened to share my last name. The worst part was the holidays. Thanksgiving came, and I wasn't invited to my parents' house. My mother called a week before to say they'd decided to keep it small this year, just immediate family, and maybe it would be better if I made other plans. I pointed out that I was immediate family, and she got quiet before saying she meant just her and Dad and my sisters and their husbands. Just the normal family, she didn't say, but I heard it anyway. Marcus's family invited me to join them in California, and I went, grateful for the escape, but heartbroken that I needed one. Christmas was somehow worse. My mother called me 3 weeks before the holiday, and this time she was more direct. She said I was welcome to come. Of course I was always welcome, I was her son. But she asked if I could come alone. She said having Marcus there would make everyone uncomfortable, that it was too soon, that maybe next year once everyone had adjusted. And then she said the thing that broke something inside me. She said, "We love you, David. We do. We just need you to be considerate of everyone else's feelings. We need you to not be so open about this around us. Can you do that? Can you just not be so gay around the family?" I sat there with the phone pressed to my ear, trying to process what she'd just said. Not be so gay. Like it was something I could turn on and off. Like a switch. Like I could just dial down who I was to make other people comfortable. I asked her what that meant exactly. Did she want me to pretend Marcus didn't exist? Did she want me to lie about my life? Did she want me to go back to being miserable and closeted just so she didn't have to explain me to her church friends? She got defensive then. Said I was being unfair. That she was trying her best. That this was hard for her too. She said she'd been raised a certain way, believed certain things, and I couldn't expect her to just throw all of that away overnight. She said she loved me, but she also loved God, and she was trying to figure out how to reconcile those two things. She said I was asking her to choose between her faith and her son, and that wasn't fair. I told her I wasn't asking her to choose anything. I was just asking her to accept me as I was, to love me completely instead of conditionally. I told her that her love shouldn't come with terms and conditions, shouldn't require me to hide fundamental parts of myself. And then I told her I wouldn't be coming for Christmas. I told her that until she could accept all of me, including Marcus, including this part of my life that made me happy, I couldn't keep showing up and pretending everything was fine. I told her I loved her, but I loved myself too, and I was done apologizing for existing. She cried. She said I was tearing the family apart, that I was choosing this lifestyle over my own mother. I told her I wasn't choosing anything except honesty, except authenticity, except refusing to be ashamed of who I loved. And then I hung up, and I sat in my car in the parking lot outside my office and cried until I couldn't cry anymore. That conversation happened 3 months ago. Since then, I've talked to my mother exactly twice. Both conversations were brief and surface level. My father hasn't called at all. Emily texts me occasionally, sends me memes and asks how I'm doing, but we haven't seen each other. Rachel sent me a card with a Bible verse about sin and redemption, which I threw away without reading past the first line. I spent Christmas with Marcus and his family, who welcomed me with open arms and treated me like I'd always been part of their lives. His mother hugged me when we arrived and told me any friend of Marcus's was family to her, and when Marcus corrected her, said I wasn't just a friend, she hugged me again and said even better. It should have been perfect. It was perfect in a lot of ways. But there was this ache underneath it all, this grief for the family I'd thought I had, for the acceptance I'd assumed would be there no matter what. I kept thinking about all the times my mother had told me she loved me growing up, all the times she'd said nothing could ever change that. And I realized those statements had invisible footnotes, conditions I'd never known existed until I'd violated them. Marcus has been incredible through all of this. He's never once suggested I should try to reconcile with my family if it means hiding who we are. He's never made me feel like I'm choosing him over them, even though that's how my mother framed it. He just holds me when I'm sad, listens when I need to talk, and reminds me that family isn't just about blood. He reminds me that I'm building a new family now, one based on acceptance and honesty and love without conditions. Some days I'm angry, furious actually. Angry at my parents for making their comfort more important than my happiness. Angry at my church for teaching me to hate parts of myself. Angry at a society that makes coming out necessary in the first place, that treats heterosexuality as the default and everything else as other. I'm angry that I spent 32 years not knowing myself because I was too afraid to look, too conditioned to see what was right in front of me. Other days I'm just sad. Sad for the relationship I've lost with my parents, for the family gatherings I'm no longer part of, for the future I'd imagined where my partner would be welcomed and loved by the people who raised me. I'm sad for my mother too, in a strange way. Sad that her beliefs are so rigid that they won't allow space for her own son's happiness. Sad that she's missing out on knowing Marcus, on seeing how good he is for me, how happy we are together. But mostly, I'm okay. Better than okay, actually. I wake up every morning next to someone who knows all of me and loves all of me. I don't have to hide or pretend or perform a version of myself that fits someone else's expectations. I can just be David, fully and completely. And that's enough. More than enough. For the first time in my life, I feel like I'm living in alignment with who I actually am, rather than who I was told I should be. I've started seeing a therapist, someone who specializes in LGBTQ issues and family estrangement. She's helped me understand that my parents' reaction isn't about me, not really. It's about their own fear, their own conditioning, their own inability to see past what they were taught. She's helped me see that I can grieve the family I thought I had while still building the life I actually want. She's helped me understand that coming out isn't a single event but an ongoing process, and that it's okay to still be figuring things out. Marcus and I have talked about the future, about what we want our life to look like. We've talked about maybe moving somewhere more progressive, somewhere we can walk down the street holding hands without worrying about who might see. We've talked about marriage eventually, about building a life together that's completely ours. We've talked about the family we'll create, whether that's through adoption or surrogacy or just surrounding ourselves with people who love and accept us. I've also started connecting with other people who've been through similar experiences. There's a support group for LGBTQ adults that meets twice a month, and hearing other people's stories has helped me feel less alone. Some of them have reconciled with their families. Others haven't. All of them understand this specific kind of grief, this loss of people who are still alive, but no longer accessible in the way they once were. My mother called last week. It was the first time in almost a month, and I almost didn't answer. But something made me pick up. Maybe curiosity, maybe hope. She asked how I was doing, and I told her the truth. I told her I was good, that work was going well, that Marcus and I had just signed a new lease on a bigger apartment. There was silence when I mentioned his name, but I didn't fill it this time. I just waited. Finally, she said she'd been thinking a lot lately. She said she'd talked to her pastor, and he'd suggested she read some books about parents of gay children. She said she'd been reading, trying to understand. She said it was hard, that everything she'd been taught told her this was wrong, but that she was trying to see it differently. She said she missed me. She said she loved me, and this time when she said it, it sounded less conditional, more like a statement of fact, than a negotiation tactic. I told her I missed her too. I told her I loved her. But I also told her that I couldn't come back into her life halfway. Couldn't be part of the family only when it was convenient or when I agreed to hide who I was. I told her that Marcus was my partner, my person, and that any relationship we rebuilt would have to include him. She didn't say yes, but she didn't say no either. She just said she understood, that she'd think about it, that maybe we could have lunch sometime, just the two of us to talk more. It's not reconciliation, not yet, but it's something. It's a crack in the wall, a possibility where before there was only silence. I don't know if my parents will ever fully accept me, will ever welcome Marcus into the family the way his family welcomed me. But I'm learning that I can't control their journey, only my own. I can't make them see what they're not ready to see. Can't force them to love me the way I need to be loved. All I can do is live my truth and hope that eventually they'll realize what they're missing. The thing I've learned through all of this is that authenticity is terrifying and liberating in equal measure. Coming out, really coming out, not just saying the words but living them, means risking everything. It means potentially losing people you love, facing rejection from places you thought were safe, rebuilding your entire understanding of yourself and your place in the world. But it also means finally being free from the constant performance, from the mental gymnastics, from the exhaustion of maintaining a version of yourself that isn't real. I think about that conversation at my mother's kitchen table sometimes, about her telling me she loved me right before asking me to be less myself. And I realize now that wasn't love, not really. Love doesn't ask you to shrink. Love doesn't require you to hide. Real love, the kind that matters, sees all of you and says yes, this, exactly this. Marcus taught me that. His family taught me that. And slowly, painfully, I'm teaching it to myself. I don't know how this story ends. I don't know if my parents will come around, if we'll ever have the relationship I once thought we had. I don't know if my sisters will eventually understand, if future holidays will include all of us together. But I do know that I'm not going back into the closet. I'm not going back to pretending, to performing, to apologizing for existing. I'm not going back to being so miserable I couldn't even recognize my own unhappiness. Some people might think I'm being stubborn, that I should be more patient with my family, should give them more time and space to adjust. And maybe they're right. Maybe I should be more understanding of how hard this is for them. But I've spent 32 years being understanding of everyone else's comfort at the expense of my own. I've spent 3 decades contorting myself to fit into boxes that were never meant for me. And I'm done. I'm done apologizing. I'm done waiting for permission to be happy. I'm done letting other people's fear dictate my life. If you're listening to this and you recognize yourself in my story, if you've ever felt that pull toward someone you weren't supposed to want, if you've ever had to choose between your truth and your family's comfort, I want you to know something. You're not alone. You're not broken. You're not wrong for wanting to be loved completely, for refusing to accept love that comes with conditions and caveats and clauses. Your truth is valid. Your feelings are real. And you deserve to be happy, fully and completely, without apology. My truth set me free, even though it cost me more than I expected to pay. But I'd pay it again, 1,000 times over, because the alternative is going back to that half-life, that shadow existence where I knew something was missing but couldn't name what it was. I'd rather live authentically and face rejection than live safely and never know myself. I'd rather be fully seen and partially accepted than fully hidden and universally approved of. So if this story touched you, if you heard yourself in any part of it, leave a like. Subscribe if you want to hear more stories like mine, stories about people finding themselves and choosing truth over comfort. And if you want, tell me in the comments where you're listening from, or just write, "My truth set me free," because you're not alone in this. None of us are. We're all just trying to figure out how to be ourselves in a world that has very specific ideas about who we're supposed to be. And maybe together we can remind each other that authenticity is always worth it, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. You're not alone.